Hey, everybody. Good to see you all again. Thank you all for jumping back on. This is our 2 o'clock session for today. Today, we are doing this. We are retooling. This is our leadership training symposium. We're retooling and retraining and reloading for effective kingdom ministry. My name is RJ Stevenson. I'm the pastor here at New St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church in Tampa, Florida. And I'm super excited that you all have joined us today. Some of you all been with us since today at 9 a.m. in the morning. And I am so glad that you all have decided to come alongside and learn as much as we can. I wanted to make this training and tooling possible and available and accessible for everybody at no charge. So there's no need. We ain't taking up no offering, ain't no registration, none of that kind of stuff. If you want to sow, you can definitely donate by doing this right here. Let me see where that. Yep. You can hit the Cash App at $New St. Paul. You can go to Givelify by looking for New St. Paul Tampa, or you can always give by way of our website at newstpaul.org. I'll leave that on the screen for a little while, just in case you decide that you want to give something today. But all of the today's sessions and stuff like that are being provided for you by the resources that we've taken care of here at New St. Paul. Ain't God all right? So listen, here's the only thing I need you to do. I need you to share this. Share the post. Share this out with as many people as you possibly can, so that people will be able to get access to this information. Hey, Jamila. Hey, Balaji. Y'all been rocking with me all day. Thank y'all so much for coming. Listen. What we are talking about in this session is this. Let me put it on screen. Retooling lay leadership. We're talking about retooling lay leadership. And in this session, I have gathered a group of highly capable lay leaders who are going to come and talk to us about how lay leaders can assist in carrying the vision and ministry of the church out into the world. How lay leaders, not the pastor, but lay leaders can, in their various organizations, even from their pews, can embrace the vision, can see the vision, and then carry that vision out into the world to have major impact in kingdom ministry. So listen, if you know that there are some lay people around you who need to hear this, you know that there's some folks in your church who've been grumbling and griping about why the pastor don't let us and why what we can't. Yeah, that session for you you finally pull them into a conversation so they can see what it is that lay leaders can do to be effective in helping us to reload our churches. Okay. Now, before I bring out my elated guests, I got something for you to watch. I found a video that sort of shows what it is that lay leaders can do. And I want you to check this out right quick, and then I'll introduce you to today's guest.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said to me, "Are you guys trying to change the world or something?" And the truth is, yeah, we are. But it takes a dedicated team. I mean, it's late. They're out there working. And we do this because we believe in what we do.
He started Give More Ministries 3 years ago, and we are all so honored to be a part of something so great. I used to work in the corporate world, but now I use my skills for an exciting ministry.
So most people come in around 8:30 in the morning, and they go home around 8 at night. And
try 10.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Look, 8, 10, whatever. Look, we're working long hours. I get that. But what we're doing here is changing the world.
Give More Ministries is doing amazing work around the world. We help those who can't help themselves. We equip, we teach, we provide for those in need. I feel that God is calling me to put every ounce of my energy into this ministry. So that's what I do. If I leave this office completely exhausted, I know it's been a good day. You guys have done a tremendous job. I can't thank you enough. By the way, we're probably going to get a phone call tonight. It's going to most likely result in the largest donation to date. I know. Keep working hard, and remember why we do what we do. At some point, we'll get out of here.
Right.
I handle the finances here, and let's just say this donation comes at a perfect time.
Apparently, we have some guy who's willing to give us $3 million. And he's supposed to call tonight. But it's 10 p.m., and I don't think it's going to happen.
I'm sure we'll hear from him soon. I don't worry. Really, I don't have time to.
I actually don't mind the long hours. You know, they say when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. I don't know, we're changing the world. It's worth it.
I try to help Pete motivate the team. We have people who are so dedicated to what we do. I just try to remind them why we do it.
The only downside to our ministry is that when I get to see my kids, it's usually when the lights are out and they're asleep. You know, I said to my wife several times, we need to take a vacation. And I've been saying that for over a year. Well, in fact, I've been saying that since we launched. I said that over 3 years ago.
I love what we do here, but sometimes I'm uncomfortable a little with the time and the hours that go into what we do. I mean, I'm all about helping those in need. I love it. I mean, it's not like I don't believe in Pete's vision. I do. He's amazing and passionate about what he does. I feel like God's working through what we're doing here. I just think...
It's great. Hold on.
Is it the donor? Is it the donor? The donor.
This is Pete. Hey. How are you? No, you don't have to do that. Don't do that. Can we talk? Like, I'm coming home. I mean it. She's done. She's leaving. There we go. I'm sorry.
Gotta tell you, it's a real life message. That was a video of a fictitious situation, but it is absolutely real, and I can say that from experience. Okay, so we're going to talk about retooling lay leadership. We're going to talk about how lay leaders add to the vision of the church, and how lay leaders are able to carry the vision from the church into the community, and how we can produce a culture of effective ministry that causes people's balance in life to maintain. Okay, the first person I want to introduce to you is the conference president of the Central Conference Lay Organization. She is somebody who I work with all the time because she is a part of the team that I work with the technical team for the 11th Episcopal District. She's somebody that I talk to at least 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a week. This is Miss Adrienne McWilliams. Thank you so much for joining us today. You green screen today?
I thought I would have had a backdrop, but you know. It's been a day. I've been busy today.
Hey, I understand. Thank you so much. The next person I want to introduce you all to is the tremendous Tampa District lay president, Her name is Sister Sandra Mitchell. She keeps me together, and she is doing what she can to help influence the lay activities here at New St. Paul. Hey, Sister Sandra, how you doing?
Fun. Good to talk to you. And I try to keep you in line.
I know it's.
And he's trying to keep me in line also.
It's an interesting task. Now to mix up the sauce, I got a young person. Her name is Jocelyn Harris, and she is somebody that the lay organization has been trying to get involved for a while. So I'm gonna put her on Front Street today. Yes. Hey, Jocelyn, how you doing?
Hello. I'm good. How you doing?
I am amazing. Thank you all for joining me in this wonderful and rich conversation today. I believe that everybody is going to be encouraged and get some insight about what it's like from a pastor's perspective, what it's like to work with the lay, what it's like for the lay to work with the pastor, and all stuff in between. So let's start here. Me coming to New St. Paul was a wonderful experience. It's been amazing, but I'm a little different. I'm different in approach. I'm different in perspective. I'm different in background. And I know what it's like for me as a pastor to arrive at a new church to pastor, but I don't know what it's like from a lay perspective about what it's like when a new pastor arrives at your church. Let's start the conversation by going to day number one. What is a lay person's perspective like when a new pastor is appointed to the church on that Friday night at annual conference, and you got the tension between Saturday and Sunday? What is going on in a lay person's mind as they get ready to embrace the ministry of a new pastor? Anthony and Valerie Frazier, how y'all doing? Hey, Tiff. What goes on in the lay person's minds as they get ready to embrace this new journey that God has put them in?
I think it's excitement. You're ready for a new start, a fresh start. It's an opportunity to that short window that you have from the closeout of the annual conference on that Friday night until that Sunday morning. You have a short window to connect and greet with your new leader. And number one, it's just like meeting anyone else new, regardless of your setting, whether it's in the church or, private or public sector, whatever it may be. Is you have that excitement of you're new, and let me just grab you by the arms to try to show you the way, so you want to make those initial introductions. I think it's just a rush to let me be first to introduce you, because if we're in person that Friday night, oh, welcome to my church, you're my new pastor now, so I think that's just one of the things, just to welcome them. I think that's what's key, one of the things you think about.
It is. And that is the truth, because if being in the AME church, we know our pastor is only with us for a year. It could be 30 years, but we have to accept who's coming to our church, and we have to be welcoming to that person. And it may be someone that I don't know, so I have to, I may not know that person. So it's just like the unknown. They don't know me, I don't know them, but it's just like anything else. We have to welcome people into our house.
Jocelyn, what's it like for you? I saw your mama walk by, and I know sometimes parents try to be like, they try to guide the young person about how to do it. What's it like as a young adult going through the shift of leadership in your church?
It could be a mix of emotions for a young leader. Are they nice? Are they, what's the vision they're going to bring to your church? Is it going to be the same as it was with the previous pastor? Or are they going to bring something new to the table? So it's basically, wheels are turning. What we're wondering where we stand as a member. where are we going to fit in their vision that they're going to bring to your church? So it's got a lot going on. I know for the pastor for sure, but for us as members, especially young leaders and young members, you know, how will we mesh and how will we come together to unify the church as a whole?
So, so there are some non-AMEs up here. So let me give some background and explain. So this is gonna be weird for some people. As a pastor, as when I am given an appointment from my bishop, it is an annual appointment, meaning that I do not get the privilege of knowing that I'm going to be at this church for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. Every year when we go to annual conferences, is when our churches come together and report about the progress of the church for the year. It's almost like a wellness check. We pastors find out about where the bishop is going to appoint us for that year, and church members find out what pastor the bishop is going to appoint to that church for the year. And when I found out about the itinerancy of the AME church, it was a blessing to me as a church planter because it allows me, one, as a pastor, never to get stale. Because at the point where I feel like my ministry has plateaued and I've done all I can and I'm hitting a ceiling, because that happens in ministry, I'm hitting a ceiling, I don't have to suffer through no longer being passionate about leading, and God can use my gifts and talents and move me to another place who've never heard what I've done before. And it gives me an opportunity to reinvent my programs and activities for major effect. The other thing it does is sometimes people get sick of people. So sometimes as a pastor, I may have become too familiar with my members. My members have become too familiar with me, and it allows me an opportunity to reset and reload and try this leadership thing again with better boundaries, better knowledge of self as a leader. As a pastor, I'm human. I may have made some missteps and some mistakes, and I may have mismanaged relationships with some people. So it allows me to overcome some of my faults and to start over again. Those are some pros to the system that people hardly ever talk about. What people do talk about is the breaking and tearing of relationship, of how you've gained a heartfelt relationship with your pastor, and now you don't know who's coming. You've gotten used to this person. We don't know who the new person is. And a lot of times the church will ice you out before you even get a chance, because you've not, they may still have the same pastor 5 years after you've been parking in the parking space.
Okay.
You may have your name on a business card and your name may be on the placard on your desk, but the pastor is not you. The pastor may actually not have been the last pastor. The pastor may be Big Mama, who she invites everybody to their house, and she don't even come to church no more because of her influence in the community. If you don't do what Big Mama say, they ain't giving no money. And Big Mama can hold her purse and have never even been to the church, and you don't even know nothing about it. So that's sort of how the culture of the AME church works, not as a system based on the book, because the book says something different, but based on the culture of how people think and operate. What, as a layperson, how do you all feel about the transition of power? Because what we saw last week is quite common sometime in our churches, about how the pastor has packed up and is ready to go long before annual conference has even started because of how things happen. Sister Adrian, how does the transition of leadership happen in a healthy way from your perspective?
I think it starts with leadership.
Mhm.
And I think as laity of the church, understanding that our denomination for ministry is an itinerancy,
Mhm.
and knowing what that really means. And I think we've probably gotten to a place where within our churches, we've gotten people that have come in from different denominations, different backgrounds, and doesn't truly understand the structure of the AME church. And as Sister Sandra Mitchell said earlier, it's 1 year. He or she may have been there for consecutive years,
Mhm.
but your appointment is for 1 year. And that's a level playing field. And because we are a connectional church, you can have those relationships.
Yes.
And that leader doesn't necessarily have to be your pastor to maintain that relationship, because we are a connectional church. But the foundation has to be set and the foundation has to be established. And we worship God first.
That was mine.
We don't worship man or woman. And it comes with our training. Are we training the people? Are we educating the people?
Mhm.
And that's twofold. It's not one-sided. What a pastor is doing, all the members training, is the laity participating too, because you got to get both sides of the table for those different viewpoints on that. And we have to it's the leadership,
Mhm.
the leadership of the church, not just the pastor, but the leadership of the church working together. We have to get to that point where we can agree to disagree, and we're not destroying relationships in the church. We're not creating division
That's it.
in the church, because that's where heartache comes in. And it's not fair for the current pastor, and it's not fair for the incoming pastor when you create these divisions in the church. And I'm not just saying clergy against laity or laity against clergy.
Mhm.
I'm talking about when you have families within the church, like you gave your example, Big Mama ruling from home and controlling things. Those are, why are we here first and foremost? When we lay our titles aside, we lay our given names aside, we are all children of God first. And that's who we should be serving. It's not about our titles. It's not about our positions. When we put God first in everything that we do, then we're able to lead and move forward effectively.
Let me see. Yeah, go ahead, Mrs. Sandra.
I'll be very honest with you, because it is hard when you've been with a pastor for 15 years and the relationship was a good relationship, and he had a good relationship with the congregation, with the church. I mean, I've seen people fall out in the aisle, on Sunday, because the pastor wasn't there and didn't want to come in the front door. But as I told my daughter, we had a pastor that was there for quite some time, and all the youth loved him, and didn't want him to go, because he had that relationship with young people. But you do have to know whose you are and who you're serving. And that's what I always tell young people: know who you're serving. And it'll make it a lot easier on you. I hated to see a lot of pastors leave, but that is what we are in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And we're part of the lay organization. We're a training unit of the church. And we have to know what's in that book that you held up. But that's not what it's all about. We have to go by God's word, but we have to go by what's in that discipline. And when things happen, they happen. We have to follow the discipline. But we're human. But we definitely have to know who we're serving.
All right. Jocelyn, what's your perspective as a young lay person?
Just to piggyback off of what they said, not only just making sure that Jesus is the center of everything that you're trying to focus on, also come in with an open mind and an open heart. Don't, just because you may not agree with the bishop's decision of the assignment, you don't know that the blessing that pastor is going to bring in. So you always have to come with a open perspective. You don't necessarily have to agree with what they're doing, but be open-minded. Don't just shut it down right then and there. Be willing to listen, be willing to participate, and just make sure that whatever you do, make sure that Jesus is the focus. It's not about you. It's not about the pastor. It's about the church and the kingdom.
Amen.
All right. Now y'all know I've been taking notes all day long. So some of the stuff y'all saying, it's gonna come up later on. I'm just waiting for the right point. So based on how, and Pastor Jeremy, man, thank you, bro. One of my friends from the 12th Episcopal District, Reverend Jeremy Jones, he's the pastor at another St. Paul, Jonesboro, Arkansas. Thank you. He asked the question I'm gonna get to in a second. And Sister Victoria, I see your point. Hold on one second. This book right here is the Constitution. But guess what? Not even this book. And not even this book. Because this is the 2000 version. This is the 2008 version. Some of y'all got the 2012 version. Somebody took mine. I got the 2016 version on my phone and then my iPad. And there's getting ready to be is it going to be 2000? It can't be 2020. It's going to have to be a 2021 version. That's going to be interesting.
We haven't gotten a new one yet.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. You gotta abide by the newest version, right? It's sort of like college. You gotta have the version you came in on. Nope, you gotta have a version that's recent because we update it so that we can make sure that we're serving the present age.
That's right.
So I tell everybody I learned the church by reading this book before I got to an actual AME church. I was brought into the AME church by a bishop who saw my skills and my talents and gifts and my graces and was like, hey, you're good for the situation that we have in this context. I want you to come and do something for me. And I had never been to a worship experience. I saw the order and the structure of the church and fell in love with it because as at the time, I was a non-denominational church planter. And I realized that the things that are in this book are the concepts that we were using to build churches all over the world, but never knew that it came from the AME church. Right? One thing that I recognize is the structure of the church is set up so that the church functions and grows in sustainability outside of the presence of the pastor. If a pastor is not appointed to that church because of a lack of resources in terms of human resources with pastors, that church is still supposed to be able to operate and function based on how the church is structured. The stewards of the church, the trustees of the church, combine to be an official board of the church that can maintain and continue to function with vision, even in the absence of a pastor. But I think what happens is because of the consistency and the rate of transition in some of our churches at times, there is no opportunity for the church to maintain and sustain a foundation. It's sort of like we had this pastor, he wanted to do it this way. Then we got this pastor and we had to do it this way. And we had to forget everything that this pastor taught us to be able to do what this pastor said. And then the next pastor didn't like the last pastor, so he completely changed everything that the last pastor did. And so it sort of creates, it almost creates a sense or notion that there is no sustainability in the itinerancy. There is no sustainability in the way that pastors are moved around, in the way that vision fluctuates and changes so often. And so I said all that to say this, Pastor Jeremy Jones, as lay, do you believe that the itinerant ministry hurts our churches? Do you believe that the way we shift our pastors around on an annual basis, do you think that hurts our church?
From my own personal perspective, I would say no. And the reason that I say no is because I've had relatives and friends that are in other denominations say to me, that's what I like about the AME church, because you have an opportunity to get someone new in. And some denominations, they get that pastor and that's it. They don't have an opportunity to switch their leadership unless there's death or retirement. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think it helps our church because at any given point in time, and I'm going to go back to what I stated earlier, in relationships, you can outgrow one another. So it's not fair to keep someone in a place that they have outgrown spiritually, or, you know, just where their ministry is taking them from a pastor, or it's not even fair to keep someone at a church that is not trying to grow a church that is on that hill to climb and desiring to be greater. And if their leadership isn't willing or even just capable of what that church needs. So I think it doesn't hurt our ministry. I think it's a tremendous help to our ministry because it's a constant thing of breeding fresh blood, fresh ideas, newness into the life and the sustainability of the church.
Sister Mitchell, does it help or hurt? Is itinerancy help or hurt?
I truly believe it does help. And it is just like the secular world where people want to change and they want to grow. They want to get another job and they don't think that's a fit, or it isn't a fit where they are in that church. It may not be their season, and this may not be where they need to be, and they want to leave. And some people just sit in the church for a long time. They're not happy. The people in the pew aren't happy. So I really think that what we do as AMEs, I think it works.
Jocelyn, what do you think?
I can see the perspective of where it might seem that it may hurt because our churches, we have pastors that have been there more than 10 years. So we get accustomed to them. They're like family to us. But in the other sense, you know, it all happens in a season. Maybe their season is up in that particular ministry. And so it's time to move on so they can grow as an individual, so the church can grow, so that we can all, you know, won't be stagnant in this AME lifestyle. With each pastor is supposed to, you know, bring their ideas, give us lessons as well as shepherd us. So I think it really doesn't hurt, but I can see why others may say it can hurt the ministry.
And Reverend Stevenson, if I may say so, and it could hurt if the pastor does stay there, because if it really is not that, no, and it could be harming him also. If that fit is not there, if it's not working, you know, you can't make it fit if it's not, if that's not where he's supposed to be or she's supposed to be. And you know, we don't want to just hold them back. It may be good and it may be bad.
I completely agree because I made a post this week about, when it starts to feel, when you're in familiar spaces and the familiar spaces start feeling uncomfortable, it may be a time and season for you to shift. Maybe a time for you to, sometimes I think we're in era of staying in a comfortable place too long. I know sometimes the spirit of familiarity creeps in and relationships cause ministry to no longer be effective, and that kind of stuff. Let me see. Sister Victoria asked this question. How are we honoring up, honoring down, and honoring all around in our relationships to avoid divisiveness? The divisiveness that comes when a pastor comes and then the members don't want this person or ain't studying this person or heard bad stuff about this person from somewhere else, and they shut down. How are we using honor to avoid that kind of situation?
I think when I've heard, when you get a pastor, you hear that sidewalk appointments and stuff you hear before they even get to in the building, but you have to give a person a chance. You can't really know someone until they come. We have to give them a chance to fulfill that appointment that the bishop has given them. And if it doesn't work, you'll know. But we have to give them a chance to come to the church if they're given that appointment.
Jocelyn, what do you think? How do you? I'll ask you this way differently to you. Have you ever been taught about what it means to honor a pastor?
I would say yes. It starts off as a child. The rule when the pastor's up preaching, don't get up, you sit down, you pay attention. You're not supposed to be walking, can't get no water. And the whole protocol. We were all taught that growing up. So I would say yes. But this is also a point where the quarterly meetings and the church meetings are important, where we can go and we can ask questions without being, so judgmental. And that is a space where we are we can be vulnerable. We can ask questions. We can express our concerns, and we won't just shut everything down. And, it won't be so much divisiveness if we can just communicate.
So Sister Adrian, Jocelyn said that she was taught as a child to honor protocol. She was taught as a child that you ain't supposed to get up and walk while the pastor's preaching. But what we find today is that it's the grown folks. It ain't the children. It's the grown folks who up walking through the church. It's the grown folks who, watch this, who believe that there are a church that makes pastors. It's the grown folks who have shown dishonor to leaders and then wonder why their children act crazy at home because mom and daddy didn't taught them how to respond to leadership at church. And then they get home and do what they saw mom and daddy do, and mom and daddy got a problem. What is it that we have to do now, Sister Adrian, to make certain that there is honor on both sides of the line, that the lay honors the integrity of the pastor honors the lay, and then that we are fostering honorable culture even with our children?
First and foremost, we need to get back to our foundation. We have, for lack of a better term, we present ourselves as if we have arrived. And when we have arrived, we forget our foundation. Amen. We forget our roots. And therefore, we lose sight of what matters. And my own personal experience, we have lost the art of teaching and training. We called it Foundation New Members Class. It's fallen to the wayside. We have this question that's asked, have the new members been trained? We removed the term probation for 90 days, but have they been trained for 90 days before they accepted in the full membership? They may get 30 minutes.
Yes.
Just to keep it 100. They may get 30 minutes. And we say, yeah, they've been trained. But because we have arrived, we expect people to know.
Gotta train.
And then we expect people to do what we think they should know. But we got to take that giant leap backwards. And you present the discipline, you present these, our class leaders. You know, we have a foundation that other people are using. Like you said, reading the book. This stuff we've been doing, but you didn't realize it originated from the AME church. And I heard someone say once that other churches are doing what we do, we came up with to do, but they're not doing it better than we're doing. Why? Because we don't forget where we come from. We're not going back to our foundation. So how do we curtail it? How do we curtail the decisiveness? We got to get back to the foundation. Honor, and that's just not in our church, but we got to do it in our homes. How can you respect the leader when you got children at home not even respecting their parents?
But the children,
because we lose our foundation.
The children at home often don't respect their parents because they see their parents dishing out disrespect. And a lot of times when people get in a certain title or position, they feel the entitlement of deciding whether or not people need to be honored, rather than just giving honor because, like, I believe that you honor a pastor because the person has embraced the responsibility of being a pastor, not because they're the most effective or they're the most knowledgeable. I mean, what person on earth is the most knowledgeable business owner? But when you get to that job, you're going to respect that person who has that parking space, whether they talk to you crazy or not. You're going to respect that person who is in that office because of their title. And then if you feel like you can't deal with what they're dishing out, you can always find you a new job. But in this church, and in a lot of churches, the people in the pews will put you out before you get an opportunity to figure it out. I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna segue to another of these questions. When I went through, I had already been ordained consecrated as an overseer in a whole, so I was a pastor of other pastors in another denomination because before I became Brother RJ in the AME church and then went through my ordinations, right? Very humbling experience. But what I realized was in the board of examiners, they almost incite fear in new pastors. And this is how, as show as you are called to ministry, as show as you are called to pastor, God gives you vision about how you can be effective in the world. Okay. If you feel like you've been called to ministry, but God has not shown you how to work that call out, sit down and wait before you assign yourself to the dotted line on some stuff that you don't have the identity of how to do. That's just two. And they tell us in the first year in the board of examiners, the first year when you get to a church, don't go there to change nothing. Get there and sit and observe the people. Watch what they do. Don't change nobody on them boards. You get there and you just deal with how they do it and see if how they do it works. And then in the second year, you may want to start talking about changing something. And for me, that was daunting as a task because sometimes as a pastor, you get sent to a place that already ain't working. You get sent to a place that is already not a well-oiled machine. It is not the members already don't come to church. The organizations and auxiliaries in the church that are set in place to build sustainability already ain't functioning. So if I listen to that, that means that for a whole year, I got to go to a church and watch it not grow. I got to go to a church and watch venomous relationships in the church not ever be mended. I got to go to a church and watch it continue to die under my ministry and get to annual conference and serve up the soup of this is the way we always done it and hope that I don't get kicked out. That ain't that ain't effective. So the question goes like this. This question was asked because as we talk about honor goes in two directions, right? Watch this. Question asked, how accepting are church members with new people who may have come because of that new pastor? And here at New St. Paul, we got a lot of that. How accepting are the members of the church when a pastor comes to your church and their charisma draws other people? How accepting are the members of not just the pastor, but in honoring new people?
Well,
That's a good question.
you know, I it's not even a church thing. It's an individual thing. Because to me, what does that say about you? What does that say about you as an individual? Because it speaks more towards those individuals and their interpersonal relationships. Because church growth is church growth.
Yes.
And if you want someone sitting there because you got some new members that came in because they're following that pastor, they're following that pastor's ministry and in that life that's probably helping them to grow spiritually. It's not a popularity thing is what I would think someone is coming. Just like we talked about the itinerancy. If I felt as though that pastor has really helped me grow spiritually and I leave this church to go follow them at the next church, it's because I feel a spiritual connection to that individual that's helping me grow. But is it we sitting there with the aspect of somebody coming in to take my spot? Then I would question their spirituality. Why are you in that spot in the first place? I digress.
We're trying to make disciples for Christ. How can we do that by pushing people away? It shouldn't make any difference if they come in with the pastor, if they come in off the street. It shouldn't make a difference if that's what we're supposed to be doing. And if we love God, then we'll love people. So it shouldn't make a difference where they came, when they came. God is good. And the more, the merrier. We want to try to lift up Jesus. We want to try to lift him up all the time. So I don't see a problem with it. If the pastor is bringing someone with him or her for whatever reason, as Sister Adrian said, they may have that spiritual relationship that's where they want to be. That's fine. God is the one in control. So I think it's fine.
Jocelyn, what you think?
We have to remember that the mission of the church and as Christians is to draw. We're supposed to draw all souls. That's scripture. So when we see new members coming in, we're supposed to embrace them. We shouldn't be worried about, are they going to take my spot? You're not going to be in that spot forever. So hurt to take somebody under your wing and embrace somebody else. You know, don't be so afraid of losing your position that you lose Jesus and you lose the mission.
Amen.
Now, watch this, right? Sister Adrian said that the reason why this happens is because members may have developed an emotional tie or a spiritual tie with the person that is helping them to grow spiritually. Watch this. Tanja Dandy said this: the itinerary aligns with change. Change will usually cause an emotional response with members. One challenge is teaching the lay to distinguish between emotions that undermine change versus those that promote change. The difference between emotions that undermine change and those that promote change. Now watch this. Here's my question. You said that some people follow pastors because they are challenged to grow spiritually, right?
Mhm.
So here's the question. Why, if all of us are supposedly going through the same regimented board of examiners process, why aren't all pastors equipped to challenge members to grow spiritually? If we all aligned on the same regimented playing field when it comes to our pastoral development by our board of examiners, now we're all supposed to have our masters of divinity. Why aren't all pastors equipped to challenge people spiritually?
I think it's the person. I mean, because it all depends on leadership. What type of leader they are. Everybody's different. No one's the same. But in order to lead, you have to have room for a lot of different things. You had your book learning. Now you need to have your, and I hope that you bring that to the church, your life learning. Because if you're a leader, people will follow. And with leadership, we know that we're going to have to expect change. You don't want, we know when a new leader comes to the church, it's going to be different. That person is different. Their style may be different. We're different than them to the pastor. So let's just embrace it. Let's embrace each other and hope that person has the leadership skills to take us where we need to go and to follow the vision.
What you think, Jocelyn?
I agree that it depends on the individual, and just to piggyback off that, in the AME church, some of us, we could be difficult to deal with, and so maybe that pastor has that fear. Just to be honest, they tend to want to walk on eggshells, but you have to. That's where the communication comes in. You have to, express your ideas, express your thoughts, and express your concerns. It may hurt, but be gentle. Be respectable. Be kind with your words. But just make sure you have that understanding as a pastor that you express what you want to do and love and what your vision is for that church and that ministry.
So one of my members in New St. Paul, Milwaukee, says because some pastors are chosen and others choose.
All right.
Let me speak to that for a second. The way I learned pastoral ministry was mentorship. My local church pastor, y'all heard him earlier this week, Archbishop Anthony W. Slater. He said to me, if you feel like you are called, not chosen, but called. If you feel like you are called to gospel ministry, try to find anything else you can possibly do first. Don't just jump into being a pastor. Don't just jump into being a preacher. If you can be a plumber and leave church alone, go do that. If you can be an electrician and not a pastor, try that. If there is some reason why you cannot get away from doing this, then you have been called. And I reference that to the prophet Samuel. It was not, his mama took him to the temple to serve, but Eli did not call Samuel to be a prophet. Eli did not choose Samuel to be a prophet. Eli didn't even fool with teaching Samuel deeper things of God until God called him. And when God calls you, there is nowhere to run. There is nowhere to hide. There is nowhere to play the back scene. There is no way to play the second fiddle. When God calls you to do something, there is a deeper passion in your heart to learn more. And I feel like there are some, just as Jamila said, there are some who are chosen, there are some who choose, but the ones who chosen and choosing ain't always called. And so here we go. We're gonna circle this back around to a question that Lucretia asked earlier. How do you deal with a pastor who isn't open to other perspectives and the leadership feels stifled like placeholders, right? And I will tell you that one of the reasons why some pastors are open to other perspectives because they are insecure with their call. They've not been mentored into how to deal with people. They were mentored as to, when you get to the church, this is how you negotiate your package. When you get to the church, you need to make sure there ain't nobody parking in your spot. When you get to the church, this is how you run that church. You take control and run that church. And God don't do that with shepherds. God calls his shepherds to oversee sheep because a shepherd ain't got to prove that he has a different vantage point with the sheep in the pen. The shepherd ain't got to prove that he's the one with the staff of a crook and a rod. The shepherd ain't got to prove that the sheep say bad and he's the only one that the pen owner comes to for the purpose of counting accountability. Real shepherds who are called, we ain't got to prove ourselves to people because we know what it took to get in that space. So how do you deal with shepherds who ain't get an A in shepherd school, but ain't nobody check their report card? How you deal with shepherds that have an inconsistency with dealing with embracing embracing the perspective of sheep?
How do you deal with it?
I think it goes back to, I want to go back to just, if I could take a step back to what Jamila said, chosen and choose. Some people are good at book work. Okay. I could, just like we say, good test takers. So I could pass my state boards or whatever. But when it comes to the commonality, the common sense stuff, or they say you got book sense, but you don't have street sense. We could all be trained, because you keep referencing the board of examiners, what they tell you, and all of this stuff.
But you gotta know.
I relate it to a carpenter. They're going to teach me how to build, show me. Then they're going to line us up and give us all a toolbox. What you going to do with your tools? Because that carpenter going to look and say, a good carpenter going to look at the wood. Somebody else going to look and say, how can I get this done quickly? They're going to go get some of that Formica. Then they're going to look at getting good solid wood floors that's going to last a lifetime. And that's what happens when those that are chosen and those that choose. Just like in our regular life, our job. What job do we choose? You look at CEOs of companies. Why are you the CEO of that company? Are you chosen because of your leadership skills and how you're able to pick people up and lead that organization to success? Or did you choose that position because you said, I have the credentials for it and it pays a good salary and that's what I want?
That's right.
What's your purpose for doing what you're doing? And when you come in, a pastor comes into that church, why are you there? Why are you there? Because what I hear is we have all the pastors from seminary and they want to come into the larger churches, but nobody wants to go to the smaller churches anymore. Why? Because I have my degree. Everybody got a degree. But we still have people that need to be served. So you're telling me the smaller church, because I like a smaller congregation where the pastor can know my name, as opposed to I'm in a large conversation and here go my member number. We all have different needs. And when you come in, it's a why. And those pastors that have those insecurities, that's a personal issue. Because none of us are perfect. Because if that pastor that come in don't want to share, is their way and nobody else's way, or they got their own program and they don't want to let nobody in because they're insecure and they feel intimidated that their leaders know more than they know. So they can't show what they don't know because they figure somebody gonna say something and run them off or whatever. But why are you there? You got to know your why. What is your why? Why are you there to serve? And it's the same thing for the leaders. Why are you there? Are you there to run off the pastor? Or are you there to work with that pastor and to help that pastor grow and help your congregation grow and to win disciples? Because that's the ultimate goal. It ain't about the building. It's not about that pastor. Are we winning souls for Christ? And I'll say this, where we are right now in this virtual space, it's not a competition of who got the best show on Sunday morning going across Facebook Live. Because if we do come back in person, people going to be tapping into who fed my soul. Who was giving that word? Because now we don't have to guess what's going on in people's church. You know, we've got to build each other up. Iron sharpens iron. What I don't know, somebody else know, and we can't be intimidated by another person's knowledge, but grow from each other.
We have to learn how to empower each other, you know. Just like with Jocelyn, she's a younger adult. I can't take what I'm doing to the grave. We need to be able to lift others up and empower. And I hope our pastors would do the same, you know, with us. We've got to mentor and motivate. And somebody did it for me. And I hope that we can continue and continue and do it for others. And I hope that pastors are just like us, that we can follow the pastor, but he's there to empower and lift us up and tell us about Jesus and what we need to do. But we have to empower each other. You know, we have to be willing to share. Our pastors have to be transparent with us, just like we need to be Oh yes. Why you put your hand over your mouth? I'm serious.
I put my hand over my mouth because
we need transparency.
There is at times not a good perspective about the synergy between pastoral leadership and laity leadership. It's almost like at times a fight between whose church is it anyway. Pastors say, I got the appointment from the bishop. And the lay leader says, you might have that appointment, but you only here for a year. And when you leave, we're going back to what we did before. And there's not a lot of times transparency because you don't know who you can trust, because everybody don't operate in the spirit of Christ. Everybody does not come to the table saying, we have been sent here by God's call, because I believe that lay leaders are called too. I believe that God calls you to a place first and then gives you an assignment. So if God calls me to come to New St. Paul, I'm supposed to come here and find out how I can be used by God in this space. God don't call me, watch this. God don't call me to chase other folk. God, when God assigns a shepherd to a pen, he does not always assign the sheep to that shepherd unless you're a special case. Now, some sheep are special cases. Some sheep have developed a unhealthy dependency on that shepherd, because in actuality, the owner should be able to assign any shepherd he wants to his pen, because the shepherd don't own the pen and neither do the sheep. The owner should be able to assign any shepherd to any pen to handle his work based on what he knows that the shepherd has the capacity to do. The sheep and the shepherd don't get to choose each other. The owner does the choosing. Amen. Now, there are special situations where there are sheep that are put in pens that are abusive. And so the owner will say to the sheep, I ain't send you over there to die, get up out of there. Right? There are times when the owner says to the shepherd, them sheep finna whip your butt. You come over here with me and let me send you to another pen. But it is the owner's responsibility to do the assigning for both the shepherd and the sheep. And what we get twisted is, I'm a sheep, but I get to choose what pen I go to without consulting with the owner. I'm a shepherd, but I don't want that pen over there because them sheep look mean, without consulting with the owner. And at the end of the day, this is all supposed to be about us being where God wants us to be and not what we want to be in ourselves.
Go
yes,
ahead. No, that was Adrian. Go ahead, Adrian.
On your analogy, I think sometimes the shepherds lose sight of who's the owner. And they want to control the owner.
Amen.
But they have to trust that the owner, and some owners do, not all owners, some owners know that shepherd, and they also know that pen, because some owners do the work and they can marry good shepherds with good pens. But if that owner doesn't put in the work, this is where you have mismatches. And then you have some shepherds that don't put in the work with the pen.
Let's put some layers in this organization chart that you're making right now.
I just followed what you laid. Now you laid the foundation.
So here we go. There is one owner, and the owner provides supervisors who then appoint shepherds. And it is good that if the only way you can supervise a shepherd is if you have been an effective shepherd. But the supervisor still gets his marching orders from the owner.
Okay, so let's put that. Okay, then let's put, because you left out that intermediary layer there. Okay, supervisor, manager, whatever it may be, from the owner. That step level, and it starts bottom up, not top down, because shepherds come from the pen. Okay, supervisors come from shepherds.
That's powerful, because what you
It
said
comes from the
is
bottom up.
what you said is sometimes the owner reaches down and grabs sheep and transforms the sheep into a shepherd. That girl, let me write that down. That'll preach, y'all. That'll preach. Pastor Jeremy Jones says, does the lay have a responsibility to train, educate, or send their leader for further training to become better in the areas that we have been talking about? Is it the lay's responsibility? Does the lay have any responsibility in making training and education available for the leader to get better?
Absolutely.
I think it would be
Not for the.
I think it'd be twofold. Okay. Let me flip that. It could be twofold. I don't think the lay has a sole responsibility in that. I think that leader has a responsibility because you can only grow as far as you're willing to go. I could pay that my job can pay for me to go and get all the training I want in the world, but they're requiring me to do it. But unless I'm passionate about an area I want to grow in, it doesn't matter how much training they send me to. It's not going to do any good if I'm not there to receive it for the right reasons.
Go ahead, Ms. Mitchell. I see you.
No, I was going to tell you, put that back up again, what he asked. The question.
Here you go. Do the lay have a responsibility to train, educate, or send their leader to further train to become better in the areas that we have been talking about? Is it the lay's responsibility to train and educate the leader?
No.
And I will say this: there are some congregations that are known as congregations that make pastors. There are some congregations that pride themselves on if he can lead, if he can pastor here, he can pastor anywhere. And they have prided themselves on being hard case studies that pastors get sent to get taught how to pastor. And you send pastors, these folks, they get beat upside the head and billy clubbed and to the point of surrender. And then you send them to another rinky-dink congregation to sort of salve them up. Yeah, that, I mean, some lay people feel like they are the seminary 2.0.
No, I think if the lay and the pastor works together, you know, we know the pastor is the leader. We are at the bottom, and the lay organization, we do a lot of training. And there are some leaders that will ask for training with help. Just as you say, you leave the seminary and you don't have a lot of experience. And some pastors are open enough to be able to receive what the lay has to offer, just like our pastor is leading us, but they're open enough to be able to join us, learn from our training. I know a lot of pastors that enjoy coming to the lay to learn more. I'm working on you. To learn more. And we call them lay pastors.
Yep.
Because you know what? Most of the time they were brought up in the lay organization themselves. Just like Jocelyn, she started off as a lay person, a young YPD. She's a missionary now. She's a lay person in the church. But there are some pastors are still passionate about lay members because they know from whence they came and they haven't forgotten, and they enjoy the teachings that we have to teach. And just like we can learn from our pastor, they can still continue to learn from us.
Jocelyn, as a young layperson, how do you determine whether or not a pastor has been equipped to lead your church?
You can tell by his heart. If his heart is not in it, it shows. What's on the inside is gonna spring out sooner or later, and it's gonna be like a big sign. You can tell. So it all starts from within.
You said a mouthful right there.
Yes.
See, just like I mean, I'm looking at my difference in age between myself and Jocelyn, and I know she's experienced a few pastors, right? You had different
ma'am.
pastors in your church. Okay, so she knows what she's talking about. She can understand the difference, and if people really have the heart for the people.
My brother Jeremy, he's enjoying this. Thank you, Pastor Jeremy and Pastor James Williams, for joining us in this conversation. Thank y'all so much. He said this. He wrote so much I can't even put it on the screen because there ain't gonna be enough room. Oh Lord. Okay, here we go. It says, "By no means is this a justification. I'm only speaking with other ministers." He made a disclaimer. I believe because of the stipulations and expectations that are put on pastors to get their master's degree and the hardships that some encounter financially and sacrifices that are made, that pastors expect to go to a church that will make up for what they have gave up to get there. Sometimes, as I said before, I believe we should be able to conduct ministry no matter the church. We all just have to learn. Okay, so is it fair for a pastor to have made the financial investment to prepare themselves in head and heart to come to a congregation, knowing that when we get out, we got student loans to repay, we got families to take care of, and all this kind of stuff? Is it fair that the pastor should have expectation of a responsibility on the membership based on what they've put in to become the leader?
I think I understand what Pastor Jeremy is saying. I don't think it's a matter of being fair, but I think it's also a matter of what were you called to do, to retooling. I can flip that and go from not just being a pastor. Is it fair that the only way I can serve in a director or VP position on my secular job is if I have a master or doctorate degree? Is that fair for me to hold certain titles? Is it fair? You know, I look at some entry-level people coming in and they're saying, is it fair that I have to have a master's degree to get entry-level pay?
But what I will say about that is this. On a secular job, when you get when you get that job posting, you know what the salary requirements of that job posting are before you show up. In this situation, you don't know what the situation is in that business till you get there. And a lot of times, because we ain't transparent and as vulnerable as we should do, when we do our reporting, we're reporting lies and set people up to follow us into situations that ain't real when you get there. So,
but you have to really know that
there's no transparency. I think we need a different system for our accuracy in reporting. I think we need a difference because there is no accountability in our accuracy in reporting of our financials or, you know, just in our membership and within our churches, because we do have some inflated numbers, you know, when you look at things and then you try to count. But I would say, as it says in the discipline, and I think this is what hurts a lot of the churches too, is pastors come in and say, I want what the previous pastor had. When the discipline clearly says the stewards negotiate that pastor service. So it's not like you walk in and you're supposed to automatically get what the previous person got. That person had been there, built, worked on something. So you don't know how many raises they done received over a period of time, but you want to walk into the level they just had. I don't think that's fair to the church either. And times change.
And I know that you have to go to school to get your master's and everything, and you're going to have those loans and everything else that's going to follow you. But that's just like anybody else. If you go to school and you get those loans, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get that job that you want. Where is your why are you becoming a pastor? Is it your calling? As I said before, it may not get that salary you want right now. It may come later on.
So Sister Victoria asked me a direct question, right? She says this: are we as laity having healthy expectations of our pastors? Do we accept that they have limitations too? As a pastor, Reverend RJ, what are your expectations of laity? Are you free to show your limitations? Now, I'm a little different, so I'm gonna just say what I'm gonna say and talk about what I talk about and let the chips fall where they lay. As a pastor, here's my expectation of a layperson: that they follow God first. I don't expect for a layperson to understand what I saw from God, because remember, as a shepherd, my perspective is to oversee sheep. My perspective ain't to see on their level, and that's not to say that their level is lower than mine. It's just a different purpose. Sheep in a pen are meant to be sheared. Sheep, as they live, shearing the sheep provides nourishment for the entire farm. Sheep, if not nourished correctly, will develop sheep diseases, and you won't have nothing to shear off, but you'll find sheep dying. But you only get to see that perspective as a shepherd. You don't get to see that perspective by rubbing elbows with sheep. You get to see that perspective by individually and intricately inspecting sheep. And all shepherds are not equipped, anointed, called, experienced enough to handle the same number of sheep in a pen. Some shepherds have a different level of span of control than other shepherds. So just because I am a certain type of shepherd who is able to care for and draw a particular kind of sheep, don't mean that shepherd number 2 has been given the same gifts and graces that God gave this shepherd, and they shouldn't be expected to. I think that one of the things that jacks us up in our expectations is what I was told as the first mark of an AME preacher: the budget. I think because the pass or fail is dipped in, did he pay his budget? That rather than a shepherd being able to have a nurturing and healthy pen, that if the shepherd didn't pay the money, that he ain't effective. Well, sometimes there are sheep who run from being sheared. Sometimes there are sheep who become viral and infect other sheep to the point where as can't nobody eat. And in this situation, you have to, there is no way that I as a shepherd can be a good pastor if I don't have a good relationship with membership, with laity. There's no way as a shepherd that the Bible says that sheep beget sheep. Shepherds can't lay down and have no sheep. So it is what I do as a shepherd that inspires other sheep to multiply. It is what I do as a shepherd that inspires other sheep to become a standard of what I'm teaching, so that somebody else asks them, hey, why are you smiling when everybody else is upset about being laid off? And a sheep can say, well, you should have heard my pastor's message on Sunday, because he told us that everything's going to be all right. And so on Monday, I know I just got my pink slip, but I believe the word of God that came out of my shepherd, and I'm on the table willing to be sheared because I believe what God is going to do. It's different. So my expectation is, before I give a vision, before I give a budget, before I address finances, do you know God? Do you have a relationship with who the owner is? Because I don't run this, right? You know, this ain't my plan. This is a plan that I received from the man. And if you got a problem with the man, that's between you and him. Now, look, I came to the pen and I was willing to deal with whatever he put in the pen before I got here. So I didn't come here because I like you or dislike you. I was just taught that I'm supposed to care for you. And as a shepherd, just like Pastor Williams said, look, if you be faithful with God's business, if I'm faithful with the pen, I ain't worried about where the sheep coming from. I ain't worried about where the money coming from. I ain't worried about none of that. I focus on relaying what God's vision for the people is, and I let God handle his own business. This ain't my pen. But do you all feel like the expectations between pastors and laity are unbalanced?
I wouldn't say that so much. I think when you go back to her question to you, what is a pastor's expectation of laity and what should laity's expectations of pastors be? I want to go back and tap into something you stated earlier. In the Board of Examiners classes, if we are requiring pastors to get their master's in divinity, what is being taught in the Board of Examiners classes? And does that curriculum need to be, do we need to revamp that? Or is it being redundant to what you're getting in seminary school? So do we need to get some hands-on, real life experience when you're going through them 4 years in Board of Examiners? Because I think it's the stuff that we call common sense, which is interpersonal relationships, time management, business one-on-one. Because no matter what you do, whether it's your household, at work, the church, you in the grocery store, you got a budget. So money is involved in everything. So it should not be the focal point and the first thing that comes out. But what are we doing in these Board of Examiner classes to equip the pastors for hands-on experience when they get to a church? Are they being set up for failure because nobody told me it's going to be like this? I can go to this college and get this seminary degree. That's book stuff. I mean, y'all be slicing and dicing and what is it y'all like to say? Exegesing the word or whatever y'all say. It flow off y'all tongue.
It's called exegesis and eisegesis.
That part.
So
but it ain't helping you in your steward board meetings. It's not helping you in your trustee meetings when your church falling apart and the pastor don't even know where to begin to go and get a quote and sitting there looking at the trustee that they done stacked the ballot with to a point, and you don't have anybody even experience that know how a roof should be done.
So watch this, right? You said something earlier too. Y'all said that the shepherd is pulled out from amongst the sheep. So if that's the case, then it's not just the Board of Examiners, but when you as a layperson voted on licensing this sheep, did you examine how efficient and consistent of a layperson they were before you gave them before you made a motion, seconded, and voted them to speak on behalf of a God that they've shown no evidence of knowing? Because the way you learn how the boards operate is not once you get in the big chair on the stage. The way you learn how the boards operate is when you sit in official board meeting, when you are an observer at church conference. That's how you learn how this stuff moves. That's how you learn how to make a motion. You learn how to do Robert's rules and YPD and WMS and the lay organization and all the other elements of the church. So if what you're saying is strong shepherds come out of being strong sheep, then the requirement to get to the board of examiners should be your sheep graduation.
You know, that was something that didn't pass. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
They tried to pass that for the sheep to try to come to the shepherd's school, and they wouldn't let it pass. They didn't accept it.
So what you see me doing right here is my way of doing that, because what you see is, as a pastor, I'm making these conversations available for my members so that they'll know if they hear me talking to other lay leaders about how the lay and the pastor should operate. They already hear me telling them what my heart is about lay leadership. They already hear me telling them what I think a pastor and a lay person's expectations and requirements should be. But the reason why this has been effective today in this symposium is because there are not a lot of pastors who are willing to do this. There are not a lot of pastors who are willing to have a honest perspective. I ain't insecure or, you know, abrasive about me speaking with lay people about what they think and what I think. I don't think this happens often enough for people to see both sides of the story, because, you know, once you cross that line and you go to your church conference and say that you want to be licensed as a preacher, when you cross that lay to clergy line, ain't no going back.
Once you don't keep that paper clean, you can get it back.
Let me see. Jeremy asking, Jeremy liking this stuff, y'all. Jeremy say, now if my calling, I want to address this first because he said something that's key. If my calling determined, he said, disclaimer. He always putting these disclaimers. These are general questions based on conversation, not related to any person, including myself. Laugh out loud. He asking for a friend. If my calling determines being a good pastor, why is it required for me to go into financial debt for a degree? Now, let me address Jeremy first. If you're talking about your calling that comes from God and not your appointment that comes from a particular denomination, your calling does not require for you to go into financial debt for a degree. But in this here particular church, with the amber and the cross, if you want to be ordained as an itinerant deacon, you must have a bachelor's degree. If you want to be ordained as an itinerant elder, you must have a master's of divinity from an ATS accredited college or something of equivalence. If you want to minister in this here church, now ministering in this here church and whether or not you called by God is a whole nother conversation. But if I, RJ, wanted to be ordained in here, I got to do what they say, and I don't get to change the rules or bend it based on my own perspective. Now, why do y'all think it's necessary for a pastor to go into financial debt for a degree? And if you smart, you wouldn't have went into debt. Anyway. Why do y'all think it's good for necessary for a pastor to go into financial debt to get a degree?
I agree with what you said. If you called by God, God is gonna make the provision for you not to be in debt. So I don't know what to say on that part, but if God's gonna make he's a way maker, that's what the church folks say. So you gotta trust in him that he's gonna make the way and you won't be in debt.
I think it's an opportunity to retool yourself. So when you take the financial aspect out of it, can you put a price on your knowledge?
Or like this, I appreciate
on your calling.
What did you bring to this table, right? And I talked about the hospital couldn't fix what was wrong, so they had to bring the person to the spiritual surgery room, and it was me that was trusted to do spiritual surgery. And if that's the case, if you expect for a doctor to go to umpteen years of schooling and get big financial aid, of, you know what I'm saying, going to debt, in order to deal with your physical body, and they still practicing medicine. They don't know what they're doing. They practicing still after all that financial debt. Wouldn't you expect for a person going to become a person who is a spiritual surgeon to incur some kind of commitment to show that they're willing to go through of getting extra teaching and extra knowledge to be specialized in dealing with particular spiritual needs in order for them to come and use this sword? Now, a physical doctor only using a scalpel. We bring a sword to cut on people. You better have went somewhere to learn how to use this, or if not, you're gonna be missing out words out of scriptures and teaching stuff, the stuff that ain't right. And that's why some of our church is messed up right now, because the person who is in front of them teaching them the word of God ain't even realize how to dissect or exegete the scripture as it was presented. I think that step is necessary. Now, I don't think it should bleed you to death. But again, back to what Pastor Williams said. Look, you get to the space and you be faithful with God. And as long as the shepherd is following what the supervisor and the owner is telling them, God has a way of bringing supernatural provisions from places that you didn't even recognize. So I don't. How then can once I've called from God, I've gone before my congregation and they have voted to license me to preach. My presiding elder has given me a license at my quarterly conference. My presiding elder has presented me to the board of examiners. I've gone through the board of examiners at my district level, at my conference level, and then at the annual conference, I am admitted to the board of examiners. I've gone through my years. I get out. Now I got my nice little piece of paper that's an ordination, and I get my my appointment to my first church. I got called by God. I've now got an assignment from my Episcopal leadership. I'm under the supervision of my presiding elder. How does a layperson hear my vision about what I believe God said the church should do? How does a layperson cause the vision of the church to be executed in the church and outside in the larger community at large?
Open heart.
Yeah. An open mind.
It's an open heart. You got to be willing to walk with, pastors cast their vision. People got to catch. Everybody ain't going to catch the vision.
Some people ain't even raising their hand to try.
No, because they're not open. But you got to, those that do have an open heart will catch the pastor's vision and run with it and run with that pastor to achieve that vision. But you're going to always have that subset of people that aren't going to do anything but fight.
But you've got to look beyond, and you have to look towards the vision. We may not always agree, but we have to look beyond that and believe in the vision.
Jocelyn, as a young adult, how do you embrace vision and apply what you know to, Sister Bonnie said, your talent, time, and your time, talent, and tithe? How do you apply what you can do as a good steward to assisting the vision of the pastor to move forward?
Basically ask your pastor what he or she needs. What can I do? Explain to them your passions, your talents, and see if what you know and what you were trained to do can help that vision. It all starts with communication. Communication is key. It is important. You don't know what you need and what tools you need unless you say something. So I would say, talk to your pastor, if they have a willing ear, willing heart, you know, they'll embrace you and you can work together and the vision will come alive.
That's amazing. Because vision coming alive is what God challenges us all to do. Just to wrap it up, it's not just my job as a pastor to make the vision happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's the pastor and the laity working together to build the house. It's the pastor and the laity coming together to seek God about how to find resources, how to find more sheep, how to work out something that we can both understand our roles as a shepherd and sheep, to make God's intentions happen in the world. And when I, as a pastor, or someone else as a sheep, if we're both not listening to God about where our place is, the Bible says, "Thy kingdom come." If you still wait for His kingdom to come after you turn in your receipt at the gates to get into heaven, no, we supposed to be seeing His kingdom happening and effective here in what we do on this earth. And the only way that we can do that effectively is by having conversations like this, being transparent, knowing our roles, and then operating as the owner has given us instruction. Thank you all so much for your willingness to have transparent and vulnerable conversations today. I believe that our churches and the body of Christ at large will be impacted wonderfully by this conversation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Pastor RJ.
Thank you.
For having me.
Now listen, what we're going to do next is extra special. At 4 p.m. in a couple minutes, I'm getting ready to invite Pastor Derek Isham in, and he is getting ready to talk to us about retooling the worship experience. How do we go from these digital spaces to reimagining what God wants to do in the midst of our congregations? And I believe that congregation is going to be powerful. So look, you're going to see it come up in about a couple of minutes. When you see it come up on the screen, go ahead and share it with as many people as you possibly can, because possibly somebody you know has been trying to figure out how to make my worship experience make people feel the presence of God on the other side of the screen. Thank y'all so much for joining us. We'll see y'all in a second.